Everyone, and welcome back to the Shady and Procedural Comic Vault. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
And we have returned to the Comic Vault to talk today, finally, about Gotham Central, a book that I have meant to read for a good long time. And ever since Gotham started, people have been comparing that to this book, and we've heard a lot of people say, oh, I wish it had just been.
Well, and when it was first announced, everyone was like, oh, they're doing Gotham Central.
Yeah.
Everyone just assumed.
People thought that. And now that I've read the first volume of this, of course, this is not all of it, we're just reviewing the first volume today, and with me having not read the rest of it, I think you've at some point read all of this.
I have not.
Oh, you haven't? Okay,
I have read this and the first story in the next trade, which is a Joker story, and that's all I've read.
Neat. Spoiler alert!
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, cool. So anyway, now that I have looked at this, the first thing I want to say is I kind of wish that Gotham was this show.
Yep.
This book, more or less, or maybe more, because, and you made this point before I even picked it up and looked at it, but I feel the same way about it. You can kind of just take this and put it on television.
That opening two-parter is your pilot.
Yeah.
Like, it is one of the best television pilots for a superhero. It is the best television pilot for a superhero show that has never existed.
And I think I would make the argument that, in a lot of ways, this kind of is a TV show.
Yeah. Oh, no, it totally is.
I feel like it's structured that way. I feel like it's paced that way. And we'll get into this, but I even wish more TV was like this. But we'll talk about it. So this comes out in 2004, the beginning of it. How long does this run? How many issues was it?
I think it's 06. I want to say it ends right before Infinite Crisis.
Okay, so it only went for a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. This is the reprinted volume, which is the original first two trades, and there's only 4 of these.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. This
also strikes me as a thing that, kind of like Gotham City Sirens, if you played your cards right, there's no reason for it to ever end. And you have a lot of peripheral Gotham stories that get told in different things. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a thing that came out in the mid-90s, early 90s that I have, that's like stories about just like random citizens in Gotham and how they're impacted by Batman.
And
we do a lot of that kind of stuff.
Dini tried his hand at that with the early parts of Streets of Gotham before he just got tired of doing that.
I forgot about that one, yeah. And so, like, there's no reason you couldn't have an ongoing that was a lot of the other stuff going on in Gotham with Batman in the background. And it makes a lot of sense because we're always discussing Batman's humanity or lack thereof and how he sometimes sees himself as above everybody else. And he's got this war going on with criminals, and you've got all these, you've got the citizens of Gotham as kind of just the lowly bystanders. And so it's kind of interesting, sort of like, this isn't the same thing at all, but sort of like with Marvels, to have, somebody looking at from the inside out. Yeah,
you're seeing it from a different perspective.
This is not about the characters I expected it to be about. It's not a book I really knew all that much about, except that, well, it's about the cops in Gotham. Yep. And I expected Gordon to be one of the main players. I thought Bullock was one of the main players. It turns out I knew nothing about this book. I knew about Alan just because
he's in the first couple episodes of...
Well, I guess especially Steve would not stop making fun of Gotham for acting like he was a character that would matter. Steve would... I never noticed it. Steve would keep complaining that his credit would be, like, through a lot of the first season, and he just disappears, but his credit
Renee
is still
Montoya
there.
does, too. They're partners.
They're partners.
And then they just disappear, and we've never brought them back.
So I knew that came from this, but that's... all I knew.
This could have been like their Netflix show, something like that. I mean, if Gotham was this,
and you wouldn't have to love Batman
it's
to
completely
watch
different.
This.
Yeah, no, it's a completely different. Like this is a Batman show that like anyone can get into.
Yeah,
because it's a cop procedural. It just happens to be set in Gotham that has supervillains.
Yeah, it's just a really good cop drama, and it doesn't feel like a generic one where, well, why does it matter that this is Gotham? Because we deal with the differences in what the politics would be like in the police department because of Batman. We talk a lot about how the world kind of revolves around Batman in Gotham, and that, of course, obviously affects your police department more. And like the way the citizens look at the cops, because you have this kind of, as I've always said with 60s Batman, a culture of dependency with Batman.
Yeah, and they're kind of dealing with that here. So before we really get into this, I want to talk about my first experiences with this book.
Absolutely. Because you used to not like this.
I used to not like this. I'd get into comics right as this is ending. Like, I've always been a comic fan, but like where I'm keeping up monthly and like that kind of a thing, right as this is ending, and this is a critical darling. This is a book that everyone's talking about. And so when I finally get around to reading it, it's when this printing comes out, the oversized, I think they first run them as hardcovers and they do softcovers. So whenever this comes out as soft, that's when I get it, and I just don't get it. There's
Even with that last arc?
I didn't finish it. I didn't finish that last arc, and then I skipped to the Joker arc because it's the Joker. So
do you not get to the Two-Face reveal?
I don't get to the Two-Face reveal. And it's part of why I don't like this book initially.
I feel like that turns you around. Or that would be likely to turn a person around.
My two biggest criticisms with this book when I initially read it were, I start that Two-Face arc, and I just go, I'm reading this book for it to be about cops in Gotham. The second we're dealing with a normal criminal, you're missing the point of what this book should be. And I'm wrong. Because I would read this book if it was like if there was an arc that was just a normal criminal.
Yeah.
Like me now, I would read that. I would still read this, but
because that criminal is gonna be different because he lives in a world of costume supervillains.
Yeah. But so like I start an arc and I'm like, we're in Gotham. Why are you dealing with regular criminals?
Well, and
like
the regular criminal we have is not like wholly uninteresting.
No. I agree. I was wrong.
But the stakes get real raised when you find out there's more going on than that.
And I take the big thing that I took away from this read, in contrast to my initial reading of it, is Marcus Driver. I take his stance on Batman as the book stance on Batman initially, and I think this book is really anti-Batman. And rereading it here, I'm like, I'm wrong.
It plays both sides of
this
that.
character. This character really doesn't like Batman.
And here's the thing. It's really interesting because I don't know if this is intentional, really, because I haven't been able to read past this yet. But this, in a way, feels like a piece. Like these 10 issues. And by the way, 10 issues.
Yep.
This is, like, it doesn't look like 10 issues. I was really surprised by that.
Yep.
And I don't think we're skimping on page count or anything.
No.
But it is a swift read.
Yeah, it's a real fast read.
Like, all 10 issues. I mean, I read this today. It probably took me an hour and a half. And, but I don't think that you would pick up on the fact that it's not necessarily an Batman book, and that it's saying that Batman is causing a lot more problems than he's solving, until you get to the end and Batman becomes necessary.
Yeah.
We have a place in that last arc where, I think it's Alan that just straight up says, I love this line. I would turn on the signal in the daytime. We have to have Batman. We can't solve this on our own. And then
I think he's talking about the Joker there. Is that what it is? He's talking about something that's not at hand, right?
No, it's when they find out that it's Two-Face.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, it's not that it's not at hand. It's like we're not equipped for this.
Yeah.
We need Batman because they don't have enough clues. They don't understand. There's some stuff in this about like how these cops aren't prepared for the supervillains. Like, they don't understand the psychology the way Batman does. There's arguments. I love the Mr. Freeze stuff. There's in the first arc, there's arguments about what Mr. Freeze is and what he's all about.
Yeah, they're trying to psychoanalyze him and figure out, does this make sense for his MO? Is this... they have that conversation about, like, this is what he wants, no, this is what he wants.
Yeah.
And they don't know.
And both of them are too oversimplified.
Yeah.
It was kind of all of that.
Yeah. And it's such a scary Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, it is. I don't mean to jump around too much,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that like it does kind of feel like a piece by the end, because Batman comes in and saves the day. And at the beginning,
it's a real solid like first year of comics.
Yes.
Where you're really, this is what this book is, and like, I know it's not 12 issues, but like this really, it's a real good, just like, this is the first year of this.
One thing I thought it was doing, I'd like to talk about structure for a second, before we sink our teeth into each of the stories. I thought until I got to the very end of this trade, that it was building on issue counts. So, like, the first arc is 2 issues.
The second
arc is 3 issues. I thought the next arc would be 4, and then it was 5. And then I was like, oh, it would have been cooler if you'd been able to do that, but then I just decided that they were not doing that intentionally. But I do think that it might be intentional, still, that we are escalating the number of issues that we're doing for each arc. We don't see this kind of thing much anymore. Usually, you have a real solid. Like, you might have a fill-in arc that's 2 issues. It's really interesting to open a thing like this with a 2-issue arc.
And it wasn't supposed to be.
Oh, it wasn't.
It's supposed to be an oversized one, issue number 1.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And for like at the last minute, they decided not to, so they rewrite it so that it has an ending in the middle, and they rewrite it so there's an opening in the middle.
I love that escalation of scale.
Yeah.
We are thematically building even while we don't have one overarching story. There's not a big bad for this if we look at this like television.
Yeah.
So the first is a Two-Face story. The second is a Firebug story.
No, the first is a Mr. Freeze story.
What did I say?
Two-Face.
I meant Mr. Freeze. Excuse me. So the first is Mr. Freeze story. The second is a Firebug story. And the third, I was concentrating too much on the way I was saying Firebug. And then the third, a 5-part story. Interesting that's not a even number. Is a Two-Face story, and we are escalating. I mean, I don't want to say in like necessarily threat size.
No, it doesn't.
But
the Two-Face story isn't bigger.
But it is
scale wise.
But it feels that way.
Yeah. Emotionally, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's so character-driven. So for Renee Montoya, that feels like a much bigger deal than the Mr. Freeze story. And part of that is just because we get more character development and progression for her.
5 issues, we have more time with them to really build. And we build to the Two-Face reveal.
Yes, we do. And that doesn't happen until the end of 4.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought, because while I was reading that, I thought it was only going to be 4 parts. I thought I was almost done. And then I got Two-Face, and then I was like, is this a cliffhanger into the next trade? And then I turned the page and there was more, and I was like, what?
Well,
I will say that was a missed opportunity.
Well, and I thought that
should have been 4 issues.
I thought that story, regardless of how you felt about this, that you would really like that story just because it builds so much on what Rucka did in No Man's Land.
Yes, and I was going to bring that up. I was surprised when you told me that this comes out as late as 2004, that we're still referencing No Man's Land. I really kind of appreciate that. And it's subtle, and it's not like it's a big deal or anything, but there's a mention somewhere where it's like something happened. It was about the lingerie store. And I think it was a lingerie store. Maybe no, it was Two-Face's bunker. I think I forget, but it was about something that was because it's underground.
Because she goes to go out the window and it's just solid concrete.
And he mentions
rocks.
that they had to rebuild it after the No Man's Land. That's what it was. Yeah.
Well, but not just that, but the Renee Montoya Two-Face relationship thing starts in No Man's Land.
Starts in No Man's Land, right?
Yeah, and that's all Rucka.
I honestly kind of forgot about that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it's just been a while since I've talked about that. Since I read it and talked about it.
See, I thought that would have been the thing, like, more than anything else in this book that you would latched onto.
And it was, but I was kind of racking my brain trying to remember where that was. Yeah, it's No Man's I just forgot. I mean, I knew they had a thing in No Man's Land, but I couldn't remember if it began there or not. Yeah, of course. It's just, No Man's Land is so many different stories all together.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So, anyway. It's been a while. This is a real specific point in Batman history.
Yeah.
And these stories can't really be told before or after it. I mean, I mean, you could do this book really any time, but this seems like exactly the right time. Yeah. Especially because Gordon is gone.
Yep. Gordon's retired after he gets shot. And there's a weird thing with Bruce Wayne that I assume is tied to Murderer Fugitive. Where they're like, Bruce Wayne did this before he went crazy. Yeah. And I was like, huh. And they say after No Man's Land, so it's not like when he flees the city because he's going to try and stop No Man's Land as Bruce Wayne.
Do they mean... And then, is there some Batman stuff that happens in the interim? There must be, because...
Between No Man's Land and this?
No, between stories of this, because he's talked about as being crazy. Is it like before he went crazy and then we know now he's not crazy, or is it we still think he's crazy?
Because then it starts when they're running the Fugitive story or something like that.
Right, but the reason I ask, of course, is because when we get to the Renee Montoya story, he bails her out.
Yeah, and he buys her lawyer.
Yeah. So they're not talking about him like he's crazy now.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they say Wayne did it, so I don't think it's just Wayne Enterprises. Like they talk about, it's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. Well, I think they say something where it's like he must have some kind of stake in this. I really like how they view Bruce Wayne. We never get to see that really. we're always seeing people perceive Bruce Wayne through Bruce Wayne's eyes. Like you rarely have.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, because we're usually first-person POV with Batman.
Yeah. So when he's Bruce Wayne, you're getting what people think of Bruce Wayne to Bruce Wayne. We're getting people completely isolated.
Even when you have it with Gordon, it's not quite accurate. That's what I meant to say about Gordon. You can't have this book with Gordon. Like maybe if they brought him in later, it could work and you do something with that. We need eyes in with people who don't directly work with Batman and who don't understand Batman. That's really important for this.
Yeah,
is that like they are forced to deal with Batman and use him reluctantly. And we have that with, I can't remember if it's the Commissioner or somebody else, who's like I'll only call him if I have to. I don't want to.
Yeah,
in that first story.
I think that's Driver. Because the second arc is all about how much he hates Batman.
Well, but it's Driver who's angry about it, and he's in the office.
Yeah, no, maybe it is. Is
it Sawyer? I guess the reason I can't remember is because I thought he was talking to a man in that scene, but Sawyer's the only person who would have the I would think the authority. So I'm just we can look at it, but anyway.
And there's this great little bit about how they cannot touch the signal. They have to have their intern flip the signal. That's a really great little, like, we really thought about this kind of a moment. And there's a lot of those in these.
I mean, it's weird that they're allowed to have it at all. I would have liked some discussion, and we've had this in some other Batman things. I would have liked some discussion about why the signal is allowed to be there if we have to pretend like Batman is a myth.
Well, don't they say that we don't acknowledge it's on top of the building, but we can't touch it regardless? Like, I thought there was discussion about that.
I don't think they straight up say anything about where it is. It's just we can't touch it. We have to. We can't acknowledge that he exists, even though he obviously at this point does. I really like that. I like that we're not pretending like anybody is guessing at whether or not Batman is a real person. We just have to treat him like a wraith.
Legally, on paper, we cannot ever say that this person exists.
Yeah. And a lot of this is about the politics of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I don't know. I think the intrigue in this is one of the big reasons to read it.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that sets it apart from other police procedurals because it's the other side of the vigilante, the vigilante thing.
And it really is a book under Batman's shadow. And I love how they use Batman in this. He's always in shadow. He's always. I mean, there's a whole sequence where he's off panel mimicking someone's voice.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is phenomenal.
And then there's that talk at the very end about how he could do all of them.
Yeah.
The voices of all. He could do an impression of all of them. And then McDonald is like, except for me, I'm brand new. And Alan's like, even you.
Yeah. There's a lot of. Like, I don't think they just sit down and go, like, let's do this book. Like, they really, like, this is a book that is fully conceived in page one.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing.
It feels like they broke a season.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
I mean, that's why it feels so much like a TV show. I love that. One of the things that makes this feel like a piece, almost as if you have like a mid-season finale or something.
Yeah.
We weren't calling them that in 2004, but you know what I mean. I don't think we were quite there yet. But this is bookended thematically in a really cool way. Where, like I said, each story is thematically kind of building to the next story, even though they're not directly tied together story-wise. And there is a continuity, and we do tend to call back to events that have happened. But that first story is about, as you say, the shadow of the Bat. And then the second story is called Motive. It's about motive, the motivation of someone to kill someone, right? And then that thematically is what the third story is all about.
Yeah.
Because Montoya has motive, but didn't actually murder anyone. And then it's all about like Two-Face's motivation.
Well, it's called Half a Life.
Yeah, and then
which is a great title.
And then that story goes all the way back to the Shadow of the Bat idea by the end of it. And I'm just really impressed with how that's all roped together. You have this middle place that's not as much about what that first story is. There's there's some of that Shadow of the Bat idea in that the world revolves around Batman because of Firebug. And I do think that is the weakest of the stories, but I also feel like you need it.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of really good like smaller bits in it.
Like I was saying earlier, yeah.
One of my favorites, and one of the ones that stuck with me from my first read, is when he's in the interrogation room. They say Firefly, and he's like, "Wasn't it Firebug?"
Yeah.
Like he corrects them, and you can tell like they did that on purpose. They're getting under his skin. I really like that little moment.
Well, and that's also a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor for comic book readers with these, you know, D-list supervillains.
Yeah.
Like, really, and I know some people in the comments are going to tell me all about the differences, but for a lot of us,
between Firefly
what
and Firebug?
is the difference between Firebug and Firefly? And, of course, yes, I'm sure there are things, but like these people would not see the difference.
There's just another fire guy that's based on an insect, I guess.
Because these are the people who don't get Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, talking about the Shadow of Batman, and why Gordon shouldn't be in this. It's also the Shadow of Gordon.
Yeah,
we have a big speech from Gordon in the first story, and then later on we talk about how someone is the last person handpicked by Gordon.
That's right.
And someone else is the first person not handpicked by Gordon, and that's a big deal. You weren't picked by Gordon, and like that's a thing with these characters.
And that's McDonald.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is McDonald. Yeah, McDonald's the first one
picked by Sawyer.
Yeah, not picked by Gordon, and there is this like looming legend of Gordon, kind of. Gordon's not. I wouldn't say Gordon is as big a figure as Batman, but he is almost mythical in this book.
And we treat him, when we finally see him, we treat him the same way we do Batman, where he's there for a minute and he's a looming larger-than-life figure, but he's also still Gordon. I mean, he's giving a speech. I really like his being there for commencement. I can't remember if it's for a college or high school.
I think it's for police academy.
It's a police academy. Okay.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah, yeah, and he's got this great speech about changing the world, where he's like, no, you all will. It might be little,
yeah, but
you all will do something that affects, you know, everything.
And we really subtly parallel Gordon and Batman in a really cool way with that, where both of them look like they're trying to handle everything single-handedly. I mean, Gordon's a workhorse; he never stops, and he and Batman both have that in common, and that makes it look like they think that everyone else is expendable and they don't need them, and that's not the case. And even Batman's not really that way. Of course, he doesn't work well with others like Gordon can, but what he's really about is setting an example, and that's what Gordon is too. So like both of them, like I think it's really important when I can't remember which story it is, but somebody solves something. Oh yeah, it's the Firebug thing, because it's like we solved this. I'm liking that more as I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
We solved that problem, but we'll talk about the actual mystery because I'm not in love with it. But
it's a little convenient at the end, where how it all comes together.
Unpredictable.
Yeah.
I kind of called some of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like Batman I think it's that story at the end of it. It's got to be. I'm glad you wrote these down. It's got to be Marcus who at the end of that is like, look, we solved this without you. We did, and that is the big thing that builds from that first.
And he calls him. He calls him with the bat signal just to
say that. Yeah, yep. Right. He's like, we didn't need you, and Batman just says thank you. And that's all he feels like he needs to say because that's their job, and Batman knows that.
Yep.
And but like whether or not you want to fault Batman for helping to create the situation that we have, he is still necessary. He has to be there. And some of these cops, handpicked by Gordon, that's not an accident. Gordon works directly with Batman. They are partners. Arguably, Gordon and Batman are as much of a partner duo as Alan and Montoya are.
Yeah.
And so in a way, if you are handpicked by Gordon, you're kind of handpicked by Batman.
Well, and there's this kind of looming threat of corruption in that Gordon's not gone. Gordon knew how to pick people that weren't corrupt and were good cops. And we don't know if that's still the case now that Gordon's gone.
Isn't it really interesting that we don't open with corruption?
Yeah.
I was waiting for it. I was like, where is that in this book?
I imagine it's going to seep in.
It already has.
Yeah.
I mean,
more so.
We haven't had a big corrupt cop story yet, but we do seem to be building toward it.
And we have at least
because
one
we're talking
cop.
about bullying.
Well, and we have the one cop who the IA cop who's working for Two-Face because Two-Face has a daughter.
Did that cop help to make the photo happen?
No, the photo is all the yes he does.
I thought he was involved in that.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the one that puts stuff in the room,
right,
in the office.
This is we're dancing all around this.
Yeah.
But that third story is where we first discover that Montoya is homosexual.
Yeah.
And I thought that was I mean that blindsided me because I didn't know where that was. Like I never knew where we first.
And I told you before you read this, I was like, when this book starts, no one knows. Yeah, no one knows. That has not been done yet.
Well, and I thought you were telling me about that because you have that initial exchange where Alan or someone is like, "Who's the lucky guy?" when she was about to go on a date, and I thought you were mentioning that because it's like, okay, at this point she's not gay, and then we discover, oh, this is where like.
Yeah, this is where she gets outed.
This is where we find that out.
And she gets outed.
I think that is handled really maturely.
I do too.
I
think it's done really well.
It's not. This is a different time.
Oh yeah,
you wouldn't write it this way now.
No, you would not write it this way now.
Now because here's the thing: you could still have the story with her parents and they won't accept her.
Yes, but the cops wouldn't act the way they act
because they are typical Hispanic Catholic parents.
Yes.
And you still will have that now. The whole, that is a mortal sin. You're going to hell. There's nothing we can do about it. We're disowning you. You're no longer, and that's what happens.
And the ending is devastating.
But her being outed the way she is in the police department, no one would care.
Yeah, no.
These days.
Yep. Nope. We've come a long way since this point.
And the couple people who did would be seen as kind of bigoted, at least in a northern giant city like this. If this happened in Little Rock, Arkansas, maybe.
Yeah.
But, well, not Little Rock. Little Rock is kind of like every other big city. But if this happened in Conway, Arkansas, maybe.
Yeah, if this happened in a small town, maybe it's a bigger deal. But in a big metropolitan city like this, it wouldn't be like it is
really
here.
A product of its time, and boy, the world has changed a lot since 04.
Oh yeah,
and not to get too political or anything, but I was reading this going, just 04 doesn't feel like that long ago to me. I mean, I've been dating my wife for a year at this point.
Yeah, no. Reading this,
a different world.
Reading this, it feels like, oh, you could do a period piece of 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and like a real legitimate period piece.
Which is weird because it's still Gotham and it still looks kind of out of time, like we always talk about with Gotham, but it's being informed by the social politics of the day, and that's not a slight against it. I think that works. Just fine.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's no other way you tell that story.
Yeah,
like it's told so well.
I love that bit where Two-Face is like, "I've taken away everything you care about. I know you love me. We're gonna get together." And she goes, "I like girls."
Yeah, and he goes, "What does that have to do with us?"
And then he's like, "Oh, I should have murdered." And I thought of that too. I was like, "Why didn't you just murder her girlfriend?"
Yeah,
I wondered that.
Yep. Well, no, it's not her. He immediately assumes it's Maggie Sawyer. He says the captain. Oh. I should have killed the captain.
Does he?
Yeah.
No, because he knows. No, because he knows who she's dating because he has the picture.
But I guess he assumes that she's. I know.
I don't think he says anything about Sawyer.
I thought it was the captain.
I'll check it. I'm not sure. Real quick, why don't we just breeze through each of the stories, shall we?
Okay.
Because we've talked about this pretty broadly as a piece.
All right. So first one is I see. I almost said it too.
Well done, sir.
Is the Mr. Freeze story, which is just a great beginning.
Yeah.
Like it's not that it's an amazing story. But it's an amazing first story. It gives you everything you need. It gives you all the characters. You get enough of a sense of them, each individually.
B-word chef.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what happened?
You thought he said
I read Chief.
Yeah.
You get a good sense of a really big cast of characters. You don't know any of them greatly.
Yeah.
But for an opening story that's only 2 issues, you get a really good sense of all of them.
And I love that it's short like it is because it's all about establishing the tone and the atmosphere and what kind of a book this is going to be, because this is an adult book. Right away we show you just how violent we're going to allow this to go. Yeah.
Well, and it really gives you this. All right. So Batman stories can be dark, but they're infinitely darker when you're not Batman.
Yeah.
The idea, because the opening scene.
Weirdly, Gotham feels scarier if you're not looking at it through Batman's eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because he somewhat relishes in, not the crime, but just Gotham itself. He romanticizes it. These people, not as much.
Well, and the opening scene is that in a nutshell. And it's what should have been the opening teaser of Gotham.
Yeah.
Like, two cops go get a tip, they open a door, and it's the wrong door. It's Mr. Freeze, and he just ices one of them. It's so good and so scary.
Yeah.
That you just open the door, and there's like, oh no, it's a supervillain.
And that immediately sucks you in.
Yep.
I thought that was handled so well.
And then the stinger at the end of that issue is they find someone who they say Mr. Freeze just put the gun in his mouth and just turns it on full, and he's just completely frozen from the inside out. There's a big icicle sticking out of his mouth.
And you can't pull him out of the car without breaking him.
It's a real scary Mr.
One
Freeze.
of the first things you see Mr. Freeze do is pull somebody's ear off.
Yeah.
Frozen.
Yep.
Yeah, but like, that's the kind of thing you can do on a 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock Fox drama because Gotham goes there.
Yep.
A lot.
Yep.
And the difference between this and Gotham is that that's often gratuitous in that show.
No, here it is about how scary it is to be in this.
This is not black humor like that show.
No.
I mean, not to compare them too much, but
yeah.
I wish they had looked at this more.
Yeah.
Even doing the show they're doing. Because it could have been kind of
It could have been
Central.
tonally this.
Yeah, it could have been about some of the same things, except it still would. Except if it's going to be young Bruce Wayne, it would still have to be a Gotham that creates Batman as opposed to a Batman that creates Gotham.
and that whole thing with the thing with Barbara Montoya. That like after going back to that story, I'm like, oh man, they really shafted Montoya.
Yeah.
She's so much better than that. As a character, because she's so good in this.
I almost wanted to call her plot device, but she's not building to anything either. Like, yeah.
No, that's just part of that. We're trying to figure out what to do with Barbara. We're trying to figure out what to do with Barbara. We're trying to figure out. She's crazy.
And we're just trying to think of some weird love triangle.
Yeah. But so the first arc is just this. It's just this really tight, really great. It's not big in scale.
Yeah.
It's not like Mr. Freeze is freezing the whole city or the whole world.
He just wants a bunch of diamonds to power his suit.
Yep.
It's a real typical Mr. Freeze kind of play, and it's not even motivated by what Mr. Freeze is usually motivated by. It's just he needs power,
and I think it's so interesting. All of these stories,
and he enjoys causing pain. I mean, that's.
All of these stories are.
Well, they talk about that. Like, I'm not even making a joke when I say that. Like he could go about his business without doing that, but he's about being cold and hurting people emotionally.
Yeah. All of these stories are one-issue Batman stories. If these are Batman cases, these are real minor, one-and-done Batman stories.
And again, I love that escalation because I start to get as invested as I ever am in Batman by the time I get to that third one.
Yeah, and that third one is, I mean, that's the best of the three. Second,
I would argue I would argue that I like that story more because I read the more innocuous ones. And like as plots they're innocuous, but or more innocuous. But again, thematically they are building to the stuff that we're doing.
And it's also the only one where the characters are involved with the villain.
Yeah.
The other ones, they're cases. This one, Two-Face goes after Renee Montoya.
Yeah.
So it feels bigger. That's part of why that story I think feels bigger, at least on the emotional thing. Yeah. This time it's personal.
So Rucka writes the first and third, and you said that.
No, they both write the first one.
Oh, they both write the first one.
Yeah, yeah. They change out pages.
I didn't know that.
So
that's really cool.
The format is they do a story that they write together. Brubaker does one, Rucka does one, and then they do a story that they write together.
Okay.
Brubaker does one, Rucka does one.
You explained that the other day, but I didn't.
So
get it right.
The first story in the next trade is the Joker story, and they both write it.
Okay.
Because obviously the Joker requires they split the cast. There's a day shift and a night shift. And so Rucka has certain characters and Brubaker has certain characters, and then when they come together, it's a case big enough that requires around-the-clock work.
Oh, cool.
So obviously the Joker would require that.
Well, if this was a TV show, then that's your mid-season finale, probably.
Yeah. And people love that Joker story. I'm interested to see, because I didn't love it, but I'm interested to see going back to it, given how much I like this book.
Well, I gotta say, and again, not to jump around too much, but people have often asked us to give them a really good Two-Face story, and I can never think of one. Oh well, here it is then, and I would say probably that No Man's Land story with this following it up. Read those together.
Yeah,
I bet that reads great back to back.
Yeah, where Harvey and Two-Face are legally battling each other, where they're both. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
I was mentioning the Rucka Brubaker thing to say that when that Rucka's solo one at the end is just wonderful, and
he wins an Eisner for it.
That's the one with the Eisner.
That's the one with the Eisner.
And Brubaker writes the middle one, and it's kind of the weaker one. And a lot of that is just because I don't think Brubaker writes police procedural as well as Rucka does. They both get the lingo and stuff right.
Brubaker has an issue, and it's in everything he's ever written.
Like, I feel like the police stuff is authentic. It's just the plotting of it.
Well, Brubaker has this issue in pretty much everything he's ever written. Brubaker has a real hard time writing good people. Brubaker's really in his element when everyone's a scumbag.
Okay.
And everyone's stabbing each other in the back. So it might be a little bit of that where, like...
This is almost too optimistic for him.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense that his character is the one that hates Batman.
Yeah.
So that might be a little bit of what you're picking up on. Like, even as Captain America, like... He picks up Captain America at the worst point in Captain America's life, and so Captain America's really out of character for the first few arcs because everything's gone wrong and everything's continuing to go wrong, and so he's just in a real bad place.
He's not dealing with it well.
His Daredevil's like that. Like he really likes to get his characters to a point where they're just bad people, or they're lashing out doing things they shouldn't be doing.
He likes to start writing when they've hit rock bottom.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
He's not interested in taking them there.
Yeah. He likes his characters at rock bottom.
I didn't know that.
So that might be a bit of what you're picking up on there.
Well, but that might be part of what's making this as a piece work as well as it is that you got two guys with really different ways of looking at Batman. And they both get to get that in there.
Yeah.
Without feeling like they're clashing.
Rucka clearly likes Batman considerably more than Brubaker does. And probably superheroes in general.
About that seems clear, yeah.
But that second arc is much more like an episode of Law and Order. Or any police procedural, I guess. But
sure.
There's a lot of going around, knocking on doors, talking to people. It's really Law and Ordery.
Which is weird that you say that because the longest going around talking to people thing is actually in that first story. Do you notice the clocks?
Yes.
I kind of thought that might be a thing we kept doing through this.
I did too.
And I didn't mind that we didn't, but it's just funny that you brought that up because I'm like, well, the one of those that comes to my mind is where I have to keeping track of, it's not real time, we keep cutting to a different, but it's like 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, but instead of saying that, we actually know what time it is and we have clocks. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt this, but I gotta mention this. Did you notice this? Okay, so you get to, oh wait, no, I'm wrong about it. It actually does work. Okay, so I didn't realize this was a second hand. I thought that was a minute hand. That's the problem. Okay, because I thought it was the exact same time as they're here when they get back to police headquarters, and it's not. They had 15 minutes to get there. That works just fine. Anyway,
but so we find
I digress.
We find out in the first story, in kind of the background of the first story, there's a girl missing. And the FBI is looking into it. Is
that the same missing girl they're dealing with in the second one?
Girl.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That we're that tight about it. Because I thought Mr. Freeze kidnapped a girl, and then it turns out, oh no, they went to the wrong place.
No, they were
beat
working
down the wrong door.
They were working the second case and got bad info.
Yeah.
And ended up in the Mr. Freeze case. That's what that was.
And then we have two cases going on simultaneously in the second story too, but they end up being the same case, and that's kind of thing I don't like about it.
Yeah, well, and Brubaker also does the like moment of like realization.
Yeah.
It happens in both the first story and the second story, and I think both of them are Marcus Driver, where like he has that moment where like he's having a conversation, he's like, wait, I understand it all.
You're a genius!
Yeah.
He says that.
Yeah. But so there's a missing girl and Firebug is going around, and one of the things I really like about Firebug is that he is a nothing villain. Like, he's not like Firefly is not a major villain, but at least I've heard of him, like that kind of a thing. I mean, like I've heard of Firebug.
Well, and what's funny is this isn't even the first Firebug.
Yeah, no,
he just got the suit.
He bought it off
now
eBay.
He's sold it. Well, no, he's selling
it's
it.
G-Bay.
Wasn't he? Isn't he selling it?
No, he's been going around committing arson.
Okay,
he buys it off G-Bay. The first Firebug sells it.
I hate that.
Yeah, me too.
I do not like it when we do that, and we do that with YouTube some too. A lot, and like Marvel has like 6 different YouTubes.
Yeah. If you're gonna do it, at least be consistent.
Yeah, like there's no reason to do that. You don't have to worry about copyright infringement or anything, or like unless we're like, well, we don't want to give advertising to something. Yeah, that's a thing that exists in. I mean, maybe the thing is you're trying to be more of a surrealistic world that's not exactly our world. So, but Call it something entirely different then. Don't do that. What does the G stand for at that point? Anyway.
But so they go to the first Firebug, or he might even be the second Firebug. I forget.
No, I think he is.
So they go to the second Firebug, and he says, "I sold all of that online solely for collectors."
To a collector, and then he says, "I met with him to show him how it works."
Yeah, and then so he's been going around torching places, and I really love what I was getting to with how D-list Firebug is. He's still terrifying from the cop's perspective.
Yeah,
like you see a whole building on fire, and that is a completely different experience when you're not reading Batman. It's like that scene in Spider-Man with the Goblin. That scene's completely different if that's a story about cops.
Yeah.
Or about firefighters.
Well, and they're talking a lot about how much more complicated their job is than Batman's in a lot of ways, because of course paperwork you have to fill out. A nice detail was one of the cops talking about how they have to work really hard to get their to get the reports in on time.
Yeah.
And then and then the other cop, I forget who it is in that scene. I think it's Alan and somebody else. And the other cop is like, "No, me too." It's like, it takes forever. I can't get it done. It's like when you live in that world and you can't just and obviously we deal with like how difficult it is to get a warrant and all of that. When you live in that world, you got to wait around a lot. It is scarier when something like that happens, because you can't just jump in your Batmobile and go to the city.
Well, and we talk about we talk about the FBI. So Marcus Driver is the cop that shows up that goes to the wrong door in the first story, and his partner is killed. So he currently does not have a partner, and he's partnered up with somebody else's partner for this case. Her name is Rami Chandler, which might be a little on the nose. It's not the most on the nose I've ever seen that name used. The most on the nose is Peter David's Hulk has a character named Marlowe Chandler, and Raymond Chandler writes Philip Marlowe. But sure, whatever, Rami Chandler. But she talks about how she didn't become part of the FBI because of the paperwork. He's like, "It can't be more than cops." She's like, "You have no idea how much paperwork the FBI has to file. Like, it is insane." And I also love I think it's in that second story too, it might be in the first one, where they talk about the board of cases closed by who, and they used to have Batman up there.
Yeah.
Just to remind everyone, like that.
And there's a line about how it's demoralizing.
Yeah, and they're like, that was the point.
That was the point.
Yeah. No, that's a great little bit.
Use Batman as a motivator.
Yeah. But so,
which again is why I wish we had talked more about that with the Bat Signal. Like, because we've done this in other Batman stories, and I think it would make sense to do it here too, where the idea is to like use the idea of Batman to have to kind of just freak out the criminals and stuff, or to make the citizens think that they're protected. And it turns out there really is that guy, and it comes from police headquarters because we want you to think it's us.
And this is, I mean,
so we're using the idea of Batman to manipulate every kind of person in different kinds of ways.
Yeah, this is kind of where you would think they would go, like, after the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Like this kind of like thinking about like how does Batman affect the cops in the city, because you have that in the Dark Knight, but it's different because it's earlier on. So we follow this case, and if the little girl babysat for these rich yuppie people. I think that's what they call them. They just refer to them as like the yuppies or whatever. It turns out that the dad is Firebug, and she found it. She found the costume. This is one of my favorite things about this story is that, and this is a very like crime story thing to do, but she's introduced as like the Virgin Angel kind of a character, where like she never did any wrong. She's good to everybody. She's a great kid. Everyone loves her, and you don't find out that like she's the worst person ever. But she wasn't perfect. She babysat people and she snooped around their houses.
Yeah.
She also stole one of Batman's batarangs, which is a whole red herring kind of thread. But another really cool little detail.
But they treat the yuppie people couple like a red herring, and then it turns out to be that guy. And that's exactly what I thought would happen.
Yeah. But also, it is only 3 issues.
Yeah.
Like, maybe if it had been 5 issues, we would have had a little bit more,
But I thought it was neat that we were investigating 2 totally unrelated cases and kind of didn't want them to end up being the same case.
It feels really neat when they come together.
And it makes it feel like a real slow Dan Gotham. That's the problem with it, is that, your 2 most important high-profile cases right now, first of all, do not feel all that big, the way you're talking about them, and second of all, they're the same case.
Yeah.
Okay. It makes Gotham feel a lot smaller than it is today.
Yeah. But there's a lot of there is a lot of good character stuff. I like Ronnie Chandler
the more we talk about it, the more I like it.
And Marcus Driver. They're temporarily partnered, but they've clearly got kind of sparks.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he asks her if she's sleeping with her partner.
I forgot about that.
And Renee Montoya looks at the 2 of them like in a bar, and she's like, they'd make a cute couple. So I imagine that's gonna be a thing we're gonna deal with.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of excited to see more of that relationship stuff pay off.
So when I finished, not to jump ahead, but when I finished this, I was immediately like, well, I want to read Volume 2.
Of course.
Because I have Volume 2 on my shelf. Are you also there?
At this point, yes.
Yeah.
Partly because I don't want too much of the nuances to leave my head.
Okay, so yeah, I'll give it to you after I read it.
Yeah, no, we should, if you want to review more of these, we should try to knock them down.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to buy Volumes 3 and 4. I'm going to try and read the whole thing real quick together.
Yeah.
And the next story's a big Joker story that a lot of people say is like their favorite Joker story.
I'm excited about that.
That's cool.
So do you already have that one?
I have that one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'll order 3 and 4, and then they'll get here sometime during the week.
Well, thanks for having these so we can talk about them.
But so, the third story, Half a Life, is really good.
Yeah, and that one we've talked the most about, so we probably don't have too much more to deal with there.
Well, one thing that we haven't talked about at all is the art.
Yeah.
It's all by Michael Lark, who I think works great here. He will follow Brubaker over to Marvel and do most of his Daredevil run with him.
Oh, really?
I don't love him on Daredevil. I don't love him on superhero stuff. He works great here when it's a little bit more action-driven.
To some degree, because that's still street level and urban.
Yeah. It's not like it's terrible. It's just he's not great at action.
My main complaint with him is that some of his faces look too similar.
Yeah. And
I was confused sometimes.
He's obviously really influenced by Mazzucchelli. I didn't actually find the book I was looking for. I was looking for Year One. Mazzucchelli drew Year One.
If I turn around and imagine myself finding the book, then that name will come to me.
I'm sure you have Year One here, so I was just scanning the shelf for Year One. But it is... he's clearly really influenced by Mazzucchelli. This book looks like Year One.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Which makes sense because it's existing in the same kind of world as Year One.
Yeah.
It's that same heightened but grounded kind of a thing. I love how he draws Two-Face because his Two-Face is the original Two-Face. Like, I don't know if you've ever read the first Two-Face story, but that's what he looks like. I mean, he's got a split suit and he just has a regular suit here, but it's real. It's not grotesque. It's really like he has like a green half of his face and his hair's a little messed up.
Yeah, and I forgot that. I mean, is that not how we drew him in No Man's Land?
It changes from issue because remember how many different artists there are doing all that different stuff.
Yeah.
And there's one story that's a great story with Two-Face, but it's drawn all cartoony.
But you're right. He doesn't have like the boils and stuff. He's just green, which kind of evokes Jekyll and Hyde and.
Yeah, no.
It looks like the Two-Face you would imagine in a silent film or an early Hammer film or something.
Yeah. It's less extravagant, which almost makes it kind of more jarring.
Something I'd like to mention about the art is the way some of the panels toward the end are handled with Two-Face. We most of the way through we have just normal looking square panels, and then when things start escalating and getting really tense with Two-Face, we start. I don't know if you noticed this, but we start getting jagged with the panels. So we have like normal panels, and then they start like rippling.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
And as he gets. And I think it's now that I just thought of this. It's supposed to denote when he's Two-Face and when he's Harvey.
Yeah.
So when he's Harvey, it's normal panels, and when he's Two-Face, they get like this.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually just the tension of the scene. No, it's he's because you notice this one it's got it, and then he's not in this panel, so it doesn't have it.
Yeah, you're right.
Isn't that cool?
That's really cool. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, I love that.
I love Rucka's Two-Face. he's got a real different take on Two-Face. His Harvey is not a good person.
Yeah.
He's
Which
also
makes so
messed
much
up.
sense, and that's... It's not exactly what we did with the animated series, because I think he's supposed to be endearing to some degree. He just has a temper, and so that temper is flared up into a second personality. The idea is that Harvey Dent was like never fully a good person, and so that creates that other personality.
Well, and I mean,
and he's an encapsulation of...
we're usually on this like 10-year timeline, right? Like everything's always happened within 10 years.
Yeah.
He's been fighting with this other half for 10 years. That has to mess you up a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which I guess Snyder kind of dealt with a little bit in his most.
Well, and I guess we're a little bit ambiguous as to who exactly Harvey Dent was before Two-Face happened.
Yeah, because that's not important to the story.
No,
What's important
not.
is who he is right here, and he is obsessed with Renee Montoya.
Yeah, I was just assuming that maybe he was sort of one of those corrupt cops or something, or had some degree
Which is a
of
take
that.
we've done on him, I
Yeah.
believe. He was corrupt before.
Real quick, with Bullock, is it that he actually was corrupt, or
I
did
don't
he
know. I
get
haven't
a
read that
bad
story.
rap? Okay.
I get the impression from this book that he got a bad rap.
Yeah, that's
or
what
at
I
least
was
that's what
thinking,
Montoya
too.
and Allen think. And I know there is a story where he comes back.
I really want to do some. I don't think anything's really done this. I really want something to compare Harvey Bullock and Harvey Dent in some way, just because they're both named Harvey and they were both police.
Yeah. Well,
There's something to be done with that.
Well, I mean, he was a lawyer.
Well, I know, but involved.
Legal, yeah. But
The DA is intimately involved in police work.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
But yeah.
well, and I mean that's also a comparison is that Harvey sat behind a desk and in a courtroom and Bullock, walked a beat.
Yeah.
But no, the Two-Face in this book is maybe the scariest Two-Face ever. Like
You
this.
think so?
This is the thing that I realized reading this was that first 2 issues. I'm like, Snyder's gonna have a real hard time topping how scary this Mr. Freeze is, and like this Two-Face is so much scarier than the Two-Face we just read in All-Star Batman, and that came around a little bit in that last issue. But
It did. But he's a different kind of deranged.
yeah, it's a much more believable kind of scary, if that's not as unsettling as it sounds. Like
Yeah.
there are crazy people like this. Like a lot of times we go really nuts with how crazy Batman villains are.
And we're not having fun with the twos and the dichotomy.
Yeah, no,
and
he's
stuff.
just obsessive. And crazy people like that do exist, and that makes him scarier.
We don't get gimmicky with the twos. And sometimes that works and can be really cool, but
Yeah, no, this is just like a real scary, crazy guy, and I really like that. But he's still a big deal. He is not just a guy who's missing half his face. Like when they find out Steve Two-Face, it's like, oh, that's a problem.
yeah, to the point where again we think we need Batman.
Yeah. He's a big enough deal that we need that. I really like the scene where Renee Montoya walks to the room and one of his guards just kind of checks, he puts down his sunglasses, checks her out for a second, and Two-Face just loses it. He's such a man of extremes. He doesn't have a middle point. He is completely calm or completely enraged. That's all he's got. I don't know. I find him really fascinating.
You know what would help the Gotham City Police Department a lot? If they could get a
Rocket launchers?
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, just not having rules.
As a standard firearm?
I think maybe simply anarchy is what we're saying. But
Well, normally cops have the shotgun in their car. If they just had a rocket launcher in their car.
yeah, and maybe they just need to drive around those truck rigs that Gunn has in Angel. They just need those.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think that what the Gotham Police Department needs is an ex-crime fighter that used to work with Batman as a cop.
Oh yeah.
And do something like Grayson, except instead of making him a spy, make him an ex-vigilante that's now a police officer. Because the big thing they're lacking is understanding of the psychology of some of these criminals.
And there's going to be a couple of stories that I know exist just because they're popular enough that I've heard of them, even if I haven't read them. But there's going to be one where they team up with the cops from the Flash's cities.
Oh, that's cool.
And they have a completely different view on their villains and their hero.
Well, and I love the comparison that we make with Metropolis briefly, with Maggie Sawyer, where somebody has to tell her, this is not the city of tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. And it's real. I don't know.
They almost don't trust her because she hasn't dealt with police corruption, I think.
Yeah. She's lived in a far more perfect world. I think it's interesting to bring her in. I don't know if she comes in for this book, or if that's something we do in the Batman books and she's just here, but it seems like a real recent development.
And it seems real deliberate.
Well, especially with, like, that's real... Convenience, not the right word. If it's not intentional, it is really convenient that she was there for when Rucka went to do this Renee Montoya story.
Yeah.
Because she has things to say to Montoya.
Yeah.
About coming out and owning this moment, and what you do right now is going to define the rest of your life. And I love that as big emotionally as this whole book, as the whole last arc gets, everything with Two-Face, and like it gets real crazy, she gets abducted. And still the hardest thing for her in her life is having to confront her parents about this, because her parents now know. That last
happens
scene,
at the very end, and it's worse for her than anything else that happens.
Yeah, that last scene is...
It's worse.
It's the only time she cries.
It's worse than getting arrested and thinking that you might get put away for murder.
Yeah, she's fine through all of it. I mean, not fine, but like she's all right. Talking to her parents, she cries.
Yeah,
like that's what breaks her. That's what gets to her. It's real. It's great.
My father wouldn't say a word.
Yeah. Yeah, and the relationship with her brother is kind of interesting. Because we get, like, foreshadowing of that moment with her brother. And then her brother knows about it, hates it, but loves her enough to, like, run interference when this starts to come out. And he's like, no, this is because she's a cop, and they're trying to slander her name. And then by the end of the story, there is no covering it up. Her parents have to know. And she goes to talk to her parents about it. And we don't see the scene. She goes inside.
I love that.
Her girlfriend stays outside in the car and says she's going to wait for her, and we don't see the scene.
You know, there's another scene I kind of wish we hadn't seen, actually. I think it would have been maybe more effective to not show us the body of the guy that was trying to get to her, who gets murdered, that they blame her for. Because it's played for Renee Montoya as a reveal, where it's like you're not actually here for possession of drugs. You're here because we think you murdered someone. And the guy you're talking about is dead now. I wish we didn't know that yet.
But that is the only twos in the book. When Two-Face walks, or when he walks into the room, the door shuts, and let me get to it. Give me. It's blam blam, blam blam, blam blam. It's the only twos we get.
Oh, okay.
The gunshots are in sequence. At least that's how I read it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Sure.
But yeah,
there's two M's in the word blam. Let's just really read too far into the Two-Face too far into the. Oh, what was the whole thing about? Don't use the letter W. Just call him double O-Face.
Oh no, I love that because their equipment's janky, and so the W doesn't work on their keyboard because.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay. She goes. I thought you said your equipment works, and he says it does. She goes, what about the W? He goes, well, don't use W's. She goes, how do you spell Two-Face without a W? He goes, try two O's.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's really funny. This is the cover that I want.
Two-Face for me.
I talked to you about that there was a cover. I love all of these covers, but there was a cover I want a T-shirt. This is the cover I want a T-shirt.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's. Well, you'll do it in the
thing. Yeah. No, I appreciate you doing that though, because now I know what to put up there.
Yeah, but no, I want that as a T-shirt. It's a real great cover.
Real quick, I also just thought of this. Obviously, I just thought of it. Dichotomies are interesting. So you've got Two-Face. He's going after Renee Montoya. He creates a situation where she has to get outed and show her second life, her double life. Comparing her to Batman is already kind of interesting. And then the fact that this guy who has two personalities is forcing her to reveal her other side.
Well, and it's called Half a Life.
Yeah. And
I really like that because there is a whole half her life that no one knows. Yeah. Like, she's never living a full life. She's always living one of two halves of her life. It's real poetic.
That's a good double entendre.
Yeah. And it also doesn't immediately tell you that it's a Two-Face story.
No, I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
That was a big surprise.
Oh, I didn't know if you knew it was Two-Face.
I had a brain gasp. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say about this is it's. I don't know how well this would have worked for me in issues, and I keep talking about how this would be great as a TV show and just straight up, but it would be one of those shows where it wouldn't be reviewed as well at the beginning as it would be by mid-season. where people would say, "Oh, it found its footing." Well, it's not that it found its footing; it's that it needs to do what it's doing before it gets to the place where you go, "Oh, this is amazing."
Yeah,
or the place where I went. This is amazing.
There's a difference between laying the groundwork and finding your footing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Foundation.
Yeah. No. I was real surprised. You're like, yeah, it's okay, but you hadn't gotten to the.
I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
I had read the first part of that story so far.
It's so good.
I didn't know yet just how maturely it was going to handle the coming out plot. Mm-hmm. I thought that could have gotten too typical. It's really good.
I got crap for this last night. But I was wrong. I'm sure there are old videos where I talk about not liking this on my channel somewhere. Mm-hmm. I'm completely wrong. And I don't know if it's I've matured, this has just become more of my thing because I like cop stories and detective stories more than I did when I was 20 or whatever. But something has changed in me. And I love this. But
isn't some of it finally reading the rest of that last story? But you were,
it's true.
But you were already enjoying it more.
Yeah, no. From like page 1, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I think some of it is that I've just matured a bit.
You're also more of a detective fiction person than you might have been when you first read this.
Yep, that's definitely part of it.
You've always liked noirish things.
Yeah, but maybe more so in the past year or so as I've really been trying to get more educated on and reading more of that kind of stuff, as opposed to this is a thing that I like sometimes, and I enjoy it when things do these kinds of things. I've really been reading more of that kind of stuff, and it's interesting because in a 3-day span, I read this. I read Stumptown Volume 2, and I'm reading Black Magic. And I've always liked Rucka. I'm realizing I think I love Rucka. I think I really, really like Rucka.
Well, and I didn't talk as much about the dialogue as I meant to, but everybody has a distinct voice.
I love Crispus Allen. I really hope Crispus Allen gets a story that's more focused on him.
Yeah.
Because he's great. I love, we didn't talk about this, it's one of my favorite little details, that Major Thefts just keeps pawning off cases to major crimes because they're always Catwoman.
Yeah, that's really funny. And then they're calling them lazy?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. It's great.
You guys just sit around and let Batman handle everything. You're giving us all your theft cases.
And Crispus Allen just loses on that guy. He's like, I know what you're doing. Because I think
intercompany politics were, and it's fun. That's where some of the levity comes from.
Well, and I think part of the implication of that is that it's not always Catwoman. They just say it's. They just find someone to say that Catwoman stole them. Well, it's not us. It's you guys.
Oh, was it weird that there is some character that keeps being brought up named Nora that starts in the Mr. Freeze story? What was that about?
Why would you do that?
Why? Because I kept expecting it to have something to do with Mr. Freeze, and then she's mentioned again in the second story, and I'm like, well, I guess that has nothing to do with Mr. Freeze. Why would you name her that?
Well, speaking of wives, we did mention when we were talking about the Mr. Freeze story, the wife that's to come in and see her husband.
Yeah.
He's the one that gets frozen to his car, and they have to take him out in pieces.
And then they lose pieces when they pull him out.
Yeah.
And she insists on seeing the body.
And she's a coroner.
Yeah, she's like, I see this all day.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Not this.
And we don't see it.
No, but she can't handle it.
Yeah. But I really like that we don't see the body.
Yeah. And that's not played melodramatic. You really believe it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
This is... Well, and I've been told it has an ending. This book does not get canceled. It's not like a high seller, but it sells well enough that this book ends when Rucka decides to end it.
Cool.
So hopefully it doesn't feel... And then Crispus Allen becomes the Spectre.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Crispus Allen becomes the Spectre in Infinite Crisis.
I didn't know that. That's crazy. Yeah.
And it's the Spectre, but with a goatee.
What? And of course, all of these people, not all these people, but we like to take cops and other peripheral characters in Batman and turn them into superheroes because...
Well, and Renee Montoya becomes the Question, but that's also Rucka. Everything with Renee Montoya is the Question is Rucka.
I really want to read that now because I love his Montoya.
And that happens in 52. Not New 52, obviously. The original miniseries 52, which Rucka is a writer on. His section of that book is Renee Montoya in the Question and Batwoman. And that's the story of her becoming
people tell me that whole thing is good.
You know how I've read that? I've listened to the graphic audio adaptation of the novel.
For some reason, I own the novel.
Really?
I never read it.
Yeah, I listened to the novel. I never read the comics.
I have it somewhere.
And that's been collected into 4 of these.
Oh, cool.
So it's
maybe someday
more easily accessible. But that's 52 comics.
We could review one a week.
We could.
That'd be fun.
We could. That would be kind of fun.
Sure, why not?
I mean, maybe not at this moment in time,
no, but sometime down the road.
Yeah.
I don't mean tomorrow, but down the
We'll experience it as it was originally published.
Anything else you wanted to mention about this before we bid everyone adieu?
Yeah, well, just real. If anybody else read this and didn't like it, and it's been a couple of years, try it again. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I adjusted my expectations. Like, I don't think it's that I came in with low expectations.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of it is just a taste thing. Like, just my tastes have refined, and I'm more interested in this kind of storytelling. I'm able to appreciate this more, because I'm still, I mean, you always joke about how I'm like the villain guy and the costume guy. When I'm reading this, and I start a story and there's no villain, I'm like, what's even the point of a story without a villain?
Yeah, because it's a different kind of book. You know, it's like damage control. The point of it is the humans, the regular lowly people. I mean, Batman's human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The regular lowly people that have to deal with the cleanup and stuff. This is, I mean, again, this is going to be a weird statement to make because this is through the eyes of the people on the streets, but this is tonally my Batman.
Yeah, yeah. Which makes sense given the era it came out in.
Yeah. This is real post No Man's Land, and
yep,
that's my Batman.
You know, after all the Arkham games, this might be a new way to do a Batman game.
Yeah.
Do
the cops.
Almost like a survival horror, not a survival horror, but more in that vein where you are way outmatched by what you're going to be facing, as opposed to being the super guy.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Where you're just
it
like
might be a cool way
some
to do
lowly cop.
Yeah.
Make it like the rookie in the Ghostbusters game.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be a really cool way to do a video game.
Sure. Well, anyway, thanks as always for watching. We sure appreciate it, and we will see you again soon for another Comic Vault, and we're going to try to go through these. I know we still got Supermans to do.
We do have Supermans
to do.
We'll
try to get to those. But you just
maybe
happened,
after these, because
just happened to read this, and you were like, we should review this. And I was
really
like,
good.
Okay. Because Eric reviews things, or reads things when he's not reviewing stuff, and I don't tend to do that, and so he'll be like, we need to talk about that. And
this is
like,
important. Okay. We should discuss.
And I'm not kidding. Like Eric will come up to me and just put things in my face like that. He's like, Gab, you have to read this book. That's what he does.
That's what I did with that. I was like, I'm halfway through this. Turns out this is really good. Maybe we should read it. And you're like, yeah, sure. We've been talking about Batman. We had the greatest Batman discussion we've ever had off camera.
We did. No, that is not at all what you do. I'm just kidding.
And so I just like put this on your desk.
I just want.
That's actually really that's my move. Is I put it on your desk when I'm done with it.
That's right. Yeah, but I just and I always feel like I have homework then. You know? I'm always looking for a note where are there instructions? Like are there certain things I'm supposed to know?
That's what I was doing with the Superman ones. Was just as I would finish one, I just put it on your desk. Like, all right, I finished that one.
It's your fault because you didn't read the next one.
I didn't read the next one. It's 12 issues.
I was just joking.
It's real daunting.
Well, we could go 6 and 6 maybe, but I just wanted. I was just joking. I just wanted people to think that you did this because I thought that would be really. Anyway, everybody, thanks always for watching. We sure appreciate it, and we will see you again soon. I am Captain Logan.
I'm Eric.